environment. So what you've spoken to at this point is about having a wide variety of choices, ranging from you do it yourself and call USAA or TIA Craft or STRS, and there's no sales force that's out there, to the one that comes out and spends time with you and does some planning with you and so on. I don't know that there's ever been contemplation of removing that range of style of choices here in this district. But what I see when I look at the list of the LA Unified Task Force is some of the most abusive vendors in terms of their cost structures. So my question is are you just protecting these entities that have a big interest in the stuff that they've booked? They've paid out commissions to their sales forces and they want to get them back over time. Notice why do you have a horse in this race at all?
Well, again, I think what I started the conversation with saying to you, I'm not here to tell you that the system is perfect. Frankly, I'm not here to tell you that anybody's system is perfect. There are flaws, arguably, in all aspects of our retirement system. That doesn't mean necessarily we need to throw the whole thing out. What we're trying to do, much like we were leaders in on the qualified employer side, the private employer side, is to bring over to the public sector a model for transparency that will, frankly, identify, to the extent that you perceive them, any kinds of fees that people are being charged that they may not be aware of. And we believe that's the right way to address whatever perceived abuse that you believe to be out there.
Let me ask you a couple of questions about how you see us.
Before you go on, we want to have an opportunity for others to ask questions. I hope you keep your questions and your responses brief so we can have as many as possible. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I have a question. Do you have any research to back up your position? You cited the TIA-Craft research, that having lots of, you frame it as choice, that's kind of a code word, that says it leads to lower costs for teachers.
We have some data and we are in the process of putting it together that shows that when you limit choice, you get reduced participation. And so, there's a lot of research, and I'm sure, I frankly know the people at TIA-Craft who do the research, and I'm sure that, you can do any research that's going to help present your point of view. I think what we're trying to do is, as opposed to arguing about the model, because we can argue about the model from here until whatever, and we can spend a lot of time battling over the model. And what we're trying to come to you today with is, we're probably never going to agree about the model, but can we agree about something that we know will actually help teachers and other public school employees by giving them better information now?
We could just give them better products.
Again, that's better product. With all due respect, better products are in the eye of the beholder. And so what we're saying is that rather than choosing for people, let's give people choices with the right information. And it's, we certainly understand, you have your point of view, and I respect that. I hope you feel
But I'm also a teacher, and I come from the teacher perspective. I don't work for a lobby group or anything like that.
I'm not saying.
And I've been a teacher in the kind of environment you're pushing, and let me tell you, it doesn't work for the participant. I know that firsthand.
Well, I appreciate that's your opinion. There's school districts throughout the country where, in many places, having someone to walk them through what they need to do, go to their house. I remember my mother reminded me that I had someone.
I don't think that's the.
No, if I may finish.
Well, I know your position there, and I know what you're saying, but I don't necessarily think that we would be limiting that aspect, by throwing it wide open, versus having a select group who meets certain criteria. I don't think that necessarily violates the deal that somebody can come over to my house and educate me and.
Well, it all depends on how you build the model. I guess what we're trying to make the argument here that rather than focus on the business model of a particular product or vendor, let's allow the employees to make their own choices with good information. And I want to emphasize that this isn't, when I say good information, I'm talking about real, meaningful, good information.
And
I cut
who
you off.
determines what the good information is?
That's why we want to create a group of people that represent both the consumer side and the industry side to put this together. If it's just an industry initiative, then you guys are going to perceive it that way, and it's not going to be as good.
Tim, we have 10 minutes, by the way. I cut you off in the question before. You're about to continue.
Yeah, my question really is about how you see what committees like ours are supposed to do. Do you think, for instance, that it's appropriate in a 403B for teachers or other school employees to be able to invest in derivatives contracts or commodities futures?
I'm not going to get into, with all due respect, I'm not going to get into judgments about any particular investment or product today. Okay.
So in other words, I'm getting to whether you think that this committee has any kind of responsibility to the people that we represent to protect them from, for instance, kinds of investments that might generally be considered to be too risky in retirement savings.
And I understand your point. I guess what I'm trying to say to you is I do think the committee has a responsibility. What I'm proposing isn't something just that we're going to do and it's going to sit, in a website or kind of in isolation. Taking forward the concept of this initiative, the concept would be that we would hope, frankly, and this is why this is, I think, more significant perhaps than what you're thinking, is that we would hope that school districts and states, where appropriate, throughout the country, would adopt this model disclosure as essentially, if you want to be a vendor in our space, you've got to comply with these disclosure requirements. Much like today in the 401k environment, under the new regulations, a 401k plan can't be sold unless it meets these disclosure requirements. But we don't have that in the 403B and 457 market, and we need that.
So that while you're basically fighting tooth and nail and the remedies that we might seek to impose to try to control the situation ourselves, you want to embark on this demonstration project.
I don't see it as a demonstration project, is what I'm trying to say. I see it as a real, meaningful change in the paradigm. Any vendor that is involved in your school would have to comply with these requirements. And
Under what regulation?
Well, it would be something that if you guys wanted to impose, we would actually support.
No, but in other words, why aren't you simply going to congressmen and seeing if you can get them to have this or sponsor legislation?
We did. And if you'd like a confirmation, I can have someone from George Miller's office confirm that with you.
Yeah, but in other words, it's like we can come up and say, well, we would like the moon to be blue on alternate Tuesdays, but we don't have the means to be able to enforce such a thing absent the legislation.
Let him finish his question. Your comment. Go ahead.
No, I mean, he understands what I'm saying.
I actually do, and I do have a response. What frankly, getting something through Congress is sometimes described as, maybe when the moon is blue. And the point being is that we've tried for almost 10 years to get the legislation that would have applied it to 403B and 457. Mm-hmm. We don't believe that that's going to happen anytime soon in the current political environment. We can do this as a industry, as people who care about the system. And if, frankly, school districts make it, or